Welcome everyone to another Marketing Momentum with Charles and Deborah. Hi Charles.
Hello, Deborah. Hello, everybody.
Trying to figure out how many different ways I can vary that because like every podcast starts with exactly the
There's only
same.
so many ways you can do it.
And we are continuing on our music marketing series. We have some guests lined up for future episodes, but tonight, whenever you're watching this, whatever, good morning, good afternoon. Um, Charles, I'll let you introduce it because it was actually your idea as far as a video that you picked out.
Yeah, and actually, it's one that we have discussed. It's one done by Bob Baker, and he talks about just some really what I think are just kind of basic ways to look at marketing. And so, out of all the ways that you hear social media, this site, YouTube, you really do have to kind of think of those things first. I think in the way he's talking about. Kind of breaking it down into text, video, and audio.
That makes sense as far as those four different categories. In fact, it's funny because today I was talking to Madeline Sklar. Okay, guys, that's a hint of what to watch for in future episodes.
Yeah.
And I remember a podcast I did with her, but it was her content. I was with her, but she and I don't want to spoil it for people because I really want to give credit to Madeline and what she'll share and the podcast and so forth. But I was thinking about that and how do we work that in? And then you shared the video. It's like, it's interesting how so many people have different ideas as far as music marketing, but in general, those that are successful, like Bob Baker, Madeline Sklar, and others, of course, really are in alignment.
Yeah, because you do have to kind of get a sense for, and I think this is true outside of music too. You really do have to kind of get a sense for how you communicate best. And sometimes I think, in an effort to do, if everybody says, well, you got to go do video, or you got to go do Hangouts, or you got to do a podcast, or you got to do blogging, the answer to that is maybe, because, some people can do an effective, I don't know, an effective podcast or an effective blog, and it's not that it's all they need, but it's kind of what they need to focus on because they're good at it.
That makes sense, and it helps if you enjoy it. Like, I mean, okay, I enjoy programming, but today, I don't even want to tell you what I was doing. It was so geeky. By the time I was done, I was like, okay, I think I hate programming, which I don't. That's just the, 15 minutes feel this way. But the thing is, the reason I do it is because even after a frustrating day or, just long hours, not eating, not sleeping, I still come back to it. And then I feel like if people come back to whatever that is, no matter how tired they are, they want to go back and blog, then maybe blogging is their thing.
Maybe. um, so now in terms of music, and let's just talk. What would um, you know, what do you blog about? So let's say that you feel like, okay, you know what, I'm a musician, but I like to write. The whole blogging thing, it kind of makes sense to me. So what kinds of things? Because I know that's the first thing that I always come to when somebody talks about blogging with me. They say, well, Charles, what will I even write about? What would even people be interested in? So from a musician perspective, I know there are a number of things. How would you kind of approach this whole blogging thing as a musician?
That's actually how I started as blogging as a musician, and my first blog was Scat and Style. And I don't actually spend as much time on that one. I think I told you I have 25 different blogs in different varying forms. But most of my peers, I feel like they branch off in the same way that I did, and they find that niche. So a lot of times the blogs by musicians are about music marketing, and you start to know the musician as a music marketer first and foremost, and oh wow, they sing, they're a musician. And I think that's kind of my path as well. I started out like, oh, I'm a musician, I should blog. And then I started going further into the marketing. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, I'm not doing as many concerts because I'm spending more time speaking and marketing.
Yeah, and so I guess it really does. My question is, and it's the same question I think people probably ask you and ask us all the time is, okay, how does this put me in front of, or how do I blog for the people who would be into my music? How about blogging the people who would kind of be into something that, I mean, for lack of a better word, that they'll buy something or they'll come to see me?
I think you have to find something complementary, like my vision for Scat and Style. And again, I don't spend nearly as much time, but it was going to be art and music. And I actually spent more time interviewing artists, visual artists, painters, and so forth. But the idea then was to do, since I love to do interviews of musicians So then you get like they're following. Okay, now I'm going marketing in, but they're following. You're going to come and say, oh wow, I want to check out my favorite musician. They've been interviewed. So that's one direction, is maybe feature interviews. Another one is, I wrote my thoughts on how much I love Ella Fitzgerald, and trying to write different things on jazz music, just like reviews of jazz albums, history. That was kind of the direction I was thinking of going. That way, and to answer your question, ideally, people that are interested in jazz and learning about jazz history, not that I'm the expert on all, but kind of a discovery process myself, they would come to the site and go, wow, she's not too bad either. I'll buy her album.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, kind of where blogging is today, and I mean, do you find that? And I know that you probably blog a little more than I probably blog a lot more than I do.
Too
Do you
much.
find that? Do you? I mean, are you finding that people are, are they reading it, right? Are they, there's I guess a study I guess I saw, and I don't know where I saw it, Wall Street Journal someplace, that you know that a number of people share on social media without even reading it sometimes. There's a high
I think
percentage of
I'm
people.
guilty.
Right, right. I mean, are you still finding that people are taking the time and they will invest at 5 or 10 minutes, even if it's just to scan the headlines or scan the major points? Are they reading, what you write?
I don't generally think, and not just my own, but just even when I watch my own patterns, I don't generally think that people are reading. My personal method seems to be to scan it, kind of get the headings and so forth, and then if it's really, really a good art, then I'll go read word for word. But the problem is I think we're information overload as a
Yeah,
society.
yeah, yeah. So as a musician, so are we now at that point, right? And of course, everybody who does video says this. I mean, we're now at that point. The only way you can arrest somebody's attention, right, for whether it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, is to give them something to see and give them something to hear. And I don't know. You know what? There's some logic in that, because you do, if you're interested, myself included, you have to stop and you have to at least listen to decide whether or not you're going to finish a video. That doesn't mean that video is everything, right? But there is some logic to that, though.
I think there's a lot. I mean, a lot more of my articles. I write newsy articles for this one particular site as well as Examiner, and I noticed that I'm starting to put more videos, which to me looks lazy. Like, oh, I don't need to write this. I'll just stick a video. And I didn't used to do that, but I'm doing it with the idea as a reader, what would be interesting. And I found myself, and I don't usually like poke around and listen to videos, but last night, as I was researching the topic, it was by the time we air this, it might not be news anymore, and I can never pronounce this guy's name, but Rudy G.
Giuliani,
Thank
right,
you,
right.
thank you. And oh my goodness, I feel really bad because I saw this Comedy Central political satire that was so interesting. It had me glued to watch it, so I was trying to figure out why is this so interesting that I can't. And there were, Larry. Wow, I gotta look this up because I gotta
Okay.
give him credit because he's really good at it. I sent the link to other people, but I'm watching that going, there's not very many videos that make me stop right where I'm at and watch
Right.
this. But in that case, I was getting really tired reading all of the material out there because I was trying to write a news story and have it like refer to the Washington Post, New York Times. I mean, my goodness, that media was everywhere. And here, this video is really what captured me. So, I mean, I think myself, as far as reading, I'm moving more towards the audio and visual because even with a video, you can pop over and do something else and you're still hearing it.
I mean, and when I hear that, I think, I mean, obviously, I'm less of a musician than I am probably running my mouth, but I say that,
I'm sorry.
um, is it? Do you have to be a somebody, right, before you can do video where you're gonna be able to expect people to kind of sit down and listen to you as a musician? Or, I mean, is that, and I know a number of people have used video. They've literally used the YouTube. They got on there, they played a bunch of stuff, and then they got discovered. I mean, we're not even talking about, that's like the 0.1%. That's like the, kid dreaming of being in the NBA or NFL. What we're talking about is, okay, so you're a musician. Do you have to be somebody to be effective at using video to market yourself?
I don't personally think so because my thought is you can go create the content even if you're a nobody. I don't think anyone's a nobody, but I mean, you create it. It is searchable. YouTube, make sure the description shows everything. Eventually, someone will find that. So Yeah, there's something to be said about content that goes out right away. But personally, I think get out there, keep building it, keep believing in yourself, keep building the content. And eventually, like if you hit it big, people are gonna be searching all over the place for, wow, this video is from 5 years ago. Look at this, you know?
Right, 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 right. Yeah, yeah. So now he's talking about. I know in this video he says audio, video, and text. We kind of touched on video and text. Now, the audio is a little tricky, right? Because you know you're talking about making something available that even if you don't say it's downloadable, right? You know, people find a way to download it. So how are you handling audio? I know you do jazz primarily, right? In your other persona. So in terms of audio, and you want people to listen to it, and you want to get in front of people, but at the same time, though, you don't want to devalue it. So how are you measuring that happy medium for yourself?
I think I look at it
Audio.
like a house, you know, when you lock the door, you're basically keeping out the honest thieves. But I mean, if somebody wants to break into your house, it's not about your front door being locked. They'll figure out a
Right.
way to get in. So I think I just accepted the fact that my music's going to be pirated. Based on the fan base that I have, that seems to be consistent. That there's a lot of people listening to music, but they're not. My bank account does not show that they're buying it, but it does show that they're
Right.
playing
Yeah.
it. So for myself, for my own sanity, I just accepted that and decided that to some extent I have to realize that the music is free. I mean, it's not free, so it's like locking the front door. So it's like, please go pay the, 70 cents, dollar, whatever it is for the song. But if you, I still want you to listen. So if you're not going to, okay, listen.
Yeah, and I know that I showed you an article that was read, and I don't even know who wrote this article. I'm trying to look and see. I think it was just kind of ended up on a site, and I don't know. It was shot by Sean D'Souza, and this guy, and he wrote this back in 2004, and I guess this was right around the time when Harley Davidson's story was really well known about how they came out of bankruptcy. But he drew some similarities between Harley Davidson and Sting and how Sting is one of these people that has done a very good job of what I think all marketers are trying to do now when we talk about our tribe and all the other stuff, which is to build this community where you have an opportunity to do all these other things, and that the music becomes a bridge. And I guess in that sense, though, for people whose business model revolves around creating content, even if that content is entertaining in terms of music, that somehow or another the model that's longest lasting tends to be community. So if you were to advise somebody on trying to build a community around their music, right? First of all, is that something you're trying to do? Is it realistic? And second of all, then if that's the case, then how do you approach that?
It's very realistic, and that's actually what I did with Deborah E. I'm sorry, Deborah E. fans. I'm not over there as much. You can find me in the Social Web Cafe if you're looking for me. I'm working at building the community more on the Social Web Cafe, so on the marketing end, which obviously there's a lot more competition there, so I think it's harder to develop that one. I think I mentioned to you my clout score went up with hardly any activity as far as the Deborah E. But how I started that was to respond to all the fans, and I still try to respond to all the fans and really let them know because I do care. No musician is anywhere, no entertainer, nobody is like that celebrity unless they have people that really care about them and are following them. So to me, as a musician, it is all about the fans. So, and your question is for building community. So, yeah, I think that really is key because then you have that. If you're focusing on the community, then when you come out with your next album, you already have a ready-made audience that's ready for it, and they've fallen in love with you as a person. And as a musician, I get a lot of comments about how much people love my music, but I really think that the musician has to be about the person.
But that's kind of the way I think people and I found this, and I think you and I probably agree about this, that even in terms of doing hangouts, in terms of teaching a course online, live, particularly, that engagement is the issue, right? So finding the person who's actually listening, finding the person out there and saying, hey George, I see you're listening. What do you think? And to be able to kind of use that, but it does have to be organic. It does have to be real. It does have to be genuine. But at the same time, though, it really is. I think the kind of leverage that I think people who are watching, they like to see that.
And I think, one of the tools way back when that now all of us musicians have sort of turned our back is a new rendition isn't quite the same, and that is MySpace. That used to be like the place for the musicians that go find everyone else, listen, leave comments. I mean, that just, exploded, I think, beyond probably what they were expecting. But the replacement, at least for me, is like ReverbNation is another place where I can find other musicians, and I can also find fans and comment and respond to their comments. And don't go looking at mine because I haven't been really good the last few months in responding to all of them. But I let people know where to find me. So if they want to find me on Skype, I'm there to talk to them, except for the marriage proposal. That was a little bit.
I think Mike would appreciate that.
Yeah, that was as a Deborah E. It's probably literally the last time I logged into Skype as Deborah E. It didn't really freak me out, but I guess somehow subconsciously I just didn't log in. I didn't want to hurt him. Sorry, dude. I can't do this or anything, but thank you.
All right. Oh man. So now what about what about this medium we're in right now? Is the technology there? Like if let's say um I'm a guitarist, I've got a vocalist here, I've got my keyboards here. Could I do this right here on this medium, on Google Hangouts? Can I effectively entertain somebody? Right? But I know that I can do it physically, that it's possible, but I'm talking about is the technology there? Is the audio there? Can I do it such that that person on the other side of this screen gets the experience, right, that would be worth their time to sit down and watch a Google Hangout with me and two other people doing music?
I think it would be worth it. Now there is a service out there that does that, that Stage It, and I started to go with them, and they probably have more technology that's better and so forth, but still there's nothing like Google Hangout. I'm all for it. The tricky thing is you can't do cover tunes. So I keep wanting to do these jazz standards. You can't do anything. It has to be original. And then it can get kind of tricky because I've seen some stuff that's original, but then if you go put your own material out twice, sometimes the algorithm will see it and say, oh, wait a minute, this isn't original because this is over here, and it can get really messy. So if you do it, you have to make sure it's original music that you've written that is not done by anyone else.
What do you think? Do you think the key is, now, intuitively, I would think that the key to it would be to have, to some degree, you got to have some kind of fast upload speed. So how would I do it? Let's say I could obviously do it in a place where I know what the connection is. Like in my home, I know what my connection is. I know how fast my connection is. But if I were to go to, this other guy's house, right? I don't know what their connection is. Does that matter, right? Can we still get together, do some music, and then put it through Google Hangouts and then expect that person on the other side is going to have a good audio experience, right?
Yes and no. Like I've seen some as far as festivals and things and Google Hangout, and it's kind of, you're not going to get a really high quality. In fact, it's basically low quality. Like if you're you're going to get somebody talking next to you, for example, in a stage situation in a cafe, you're going to get someone's conversation about their husband rather than the musician that's on stage. So, but if you can manage your expectations and realize that, what I would do is go ahead and do it on the Hangout, but then pull the video down and do post-production. And actually, like if you have an album, or even if you don't, if you have something that you've worked on that's a better sound quality, then insert that. So you get that live vibe in your video, but you also get the better sound quality. So that's how I do it, is kind of marry both of them.
Right. Now, obviously, you're in the marriage thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, the easiest way to do this would be through Hangouts. But you know about the other, now Google, or YouTube also still has this other way to do it, right? Inside of YouTube, which is a little technical, but it can still be done. Now, what about that way, where you're still streaming, but you're not doing it through Hangouts? Are you still dependent on the same kind of logistics in terms of upload, the audio quality? What have you found with that?
Now, you're talking about like Wirestream?
Yes.
Okay.
Wirecast.
Telestream is the company, Wirecast is the product, and you never know from what I just said that we're actually testing it. And we're still testing because we went by the setup. No offense to Telestream, but we went by the by the book on the setup and went out and bought a black box? Boy, so, oh, by the way, I did remember the guy that I want to do shout out, Larry Wilmore on Comedy Central. But okay, total
Okay.
sidebar. But whatever it was, don't buy the hardware that's recommended
Wow.
because we had all kinds of issues. I think we're going to just go sell it off for cheap and go buy different hardware. So we're actually doing. Michael is doing testing on that as far as what the best scenario. Where Wirecast really excels is on the visual, where you can do the green screen and the backdrop and you can layer and some of the stuff that many of us already do in Google Hangout with other things, so you don't necessarily need that software. The other thing too in the pro version is you can have multiple locations. So in theory, you could
Right.
have your two friends in different locations, but my guess is that with latency and different, you might have a great connection, like you said, maybe your friend doesn't. It's going to be, if you're taking turns playing music, that'd be a great way to do it. But if you're trying to play together, it could be a little bit interesting if you're a little off on the latency.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So now, um, now when you do this, I know with Google Hangouts, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I could still take I could still take a camera that say shoots maybe 1080, and could I connect it and still do this Hangout and still deliver, I guess, what would be decent video, very decent video, and whatever audio I could, or just without, I guess, without being too technical, what's the best way to kind of approach that if you have, let's say, a camera, a decent camera, and you've got a laptop.
You want to do it live. Because the problem is by the time you go through a Google Hangout, whatever, it doesn't matter how good of a camera you have. That's part of the reason why I just use a laptop camera, because we have higher end cameras, but it's always going to reduce down to like the lowest common denominator. The fact that it's going through the internet, it's like it's compressing down to be that speed, so you won't benefit from any better camera, which
Right.
is
Yeah. So
sad.
even with Wirecast, you're still probably talking about using what we're using right now.
Right. Now we are looking at to see if there's some way, we're always trying to figure out if we can kind of trick the system. And there might be something within Wirecast. And by the way, I think it's Black Magic, not Black Box, but whatever. And no offense to Black Magic. Guys, if you're watching this video, please contact us because your hardware doesn't work and I would love to get it to work. So I'm all for
Yeah.
that.
Right on.
but I just personally can't recommend your hardware because even though we have everything, it does not work. So anyway, that's sidebar. But there might be some ways to do it with, you would need something like the Wirecast software and you would need the appropriate hardware. And it does end up, because I think on the low end, is it $500 or $600 for the pro version of the software? And it starts adding up as you add hardware to that. So it's not something that someone that's doing one hangout a year is necessarily going to invest the money in. I just ended that sentence in a preposition. But anyway. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but the high quality cameras are not going to help you. You need to have an adequate camera, but it's similar to an image. For example, 72 pixels per inch is your general size for the web. Some have 96 pixels per inch if you do it on Canva. If you have anything more, like if you have an image at 600 pixels per inch, all you're doing is taking more load time. It's just a larger image, but as far as what the screen can actually see, what the monitor can see, they can't see anything beyond that 100 mark. So then you're just wasting your bandwidth to do that. It's the same thing with a camera. There's only so much that can go through the internet on a Hangout. So then you're just wasting that high quality because it won't actually record it through the internet.
Yeah. So now, broadening out this discussion on Google Hangouts. Um, I know one of the things that all that people in our world, when you have on your marketer hat, a lot of us rely on joint ventures and marketing, alliances, however those relationships, right? And so if I were to apply this and just intuitively, if I were a musician, I would say we talked about the summit, doing a summit or doing a collaboration where you have other experts to talk about something and to bring different sides of the prism. Now, if I were a musician, is it doable then for me to then take this medium of Google Hangouts and say, okay, well, we're gonna do these 10 people and we're all gonna perform over the next hour, right? And where, again, we're talking about marketing where all 10 musicians are really inviting their people to the Hangout, of course, and the benefit, of course, then is that those other musicians get a chance to uh, get in front of the following, the communities of those other people. So
Exposure.
logistic, again, I'm good at theory, right? So logistically, is that something that's possible as a marketing idea?
I think it's possible if you focus, like manage your expectations that you're getting the live vibe. You're getting the, hey, meet my friend over here, and they're, you can really kind of build up that whole live feeling. It's like, oh wow, look at all these people. This is really special. Of course, the more that you promote it, the more that it becomes exciting. You just have to realize that the audio quality of it is not going to be the same as you're
Right,
going to hear
right.
anywhere else. So if you can accept that, and you're going to realize that some musicians, and maybe it's something you have to include in the summit, is to explain to the audience, teach the audience that, hey, just because George over here has some latency, that does not mean that his music is any worse than Jane's music over here, so that the audience understands this is just about technology and the connection.
And when you talk about managing expectations, are you talking about managing the expectations of the audience, or are you talking about managing the expectations of yourself as the musician, expecting this this bump from doing this summit type thing?
I think both on that, because the musicians have to understand. I've seen musicians where it's like, wow, it's going to be all this. It's like I'm on TV, I'm Google Hangout, and I love Google Hangout. Obviously I love Hangouts,
Right, right, yeah.
but you have to manage it so that people don't think that this is like they've gone on television with these $1 million studios, which are probably $1 billion studios now. It's not.
Uh-huh.
It's Google Hangouts, and there are limitations. So if they can realize it's a limitation, and that it's more about the opportunity to be with other musicians, and like you said, exposure to the other audiences, and they realize that it's like you go out for coffee. It's an event. It's something that you can enjoy, and not expect that the quality of the video is going to be high, especially with 10 people. That
Yeah.
latency is going to increase as you add more people.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we talking about niching this down? Well, if niche is the proper word, right? Are you talking about, okay, so we're gonna have 10 uh jazz pianists, or can you do, I mean, I guess you can do it any way. Is there benefit of trying to get it down as far as you can in terms of category, and you have these 5 6 people that are really doing one aspect of this really tiny niche to try to get the people who are sort of interested in that one thing?
I think that makes sense, because if you're going to have, probably if you've got a hip hop, rap, jazz, rock, pop, those audiences. Now, I'm strange because I like pretty much all that, so I would be interested, but you're probably not going to get the audience to necessarily switch. Not that you want them to switch, but to add that musician onto the list of people they listen to. Although you said something, Charles, and this is a whole nother level of complication, but like piano players. Now, if you have a regular piano, like a grand piano, first of all, you'd have to mic it properly for the Google
Yeah.
Hangout to really hear it. Um, I was recording engineer in a past life, so so all that
Okay.
geeky stuff's coming back. But if you're using electronic, now we do this. We have some little tricks to actually feed it right into the Hangout. But most people probably wouldn't have that ability or the hardware to do that. So
So
now you're
feeding
looking at,
feeding the piano into the computer, which goes into the Hangout.
right. See, ideally, you want it to go line in if you're talking recording quality, because then you don't have all the excess noise. I mean, obviously, with a grand piano that's acoustic, we're not talking about like an electronic grand piano, an actual grand piano. It doesn't have a line, so there's no line to plug in.
Right, right, yeah.
But most people I've seen, like for example, a keyboard, they're going to put their sound output to a speaker. Well, now you run in, if you don't have it mic'd properly, and you can imagine this, the microphone, if it's pointing wrong, you're going to get a feedback loop in the middle of the Hangout. So you have to know what you're doing as far as like playing a keyboard or electric guitar, that you've got that speaker aimed properly. You know how we always insist on headphones
Yeah.
for Google Hangouts? That's where you start to run into problems as far as like playing an electric um, instrument and actually putting it in a speaker so that people can hear it in the Hangout. So I don't want to burst your bubble, but there's some other things that the musicians might need some training on how to do it on a Google Hangout.
So I guess there's sort of two things. So one thing in particular, if you can, right, and I guess it's possible today probably to be able to somehow, if you are the main artist, to somehow, whether it's through I don't know, I have one of these sound cards over here that have all these connections to kind of to have that sound card going into the Hangout and to do it that way rather than just relying on, as you said, the speaker, which is sort of one thing. And then the other thing, I guess, if you're going to do a summit, you'd almost you, even though the advantage is that you can have everybody every place, you'd almost want to be able to go if you're arranging it, you almost want to be able to go to the other people and see what they have, right?
That sounds like going to do this toy that says, yeah, I'm going to think, okay, forget the hangout. Let's just like, go to the different houses. And just do one hangout. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Although, you know, the hardware, getting the software, the Wirecast,
Yeah.
that actually would be helpful in some of this as far as and there's other techniques and there is, I have to be fair, there is Stage It, and Stage It, that's all they do is basically live performance, and that's the whole idea for musicians to be able to put virtual live concerts on. So that's what Stage It. I haven't looked at them for actually a couple of years, but that's another option for the musicians to check out Stage It.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, we know it as marketers. I guess the beauty of having done this performance on Google Hangout is that it's out there then, right? You don't have to upload it, you don't have to fix it. It's kind of, I mean, if you don't do anything else to it, you've got a live performance that a lot of people have already watched that's available on YouTube that hopefully gets shared on social media for what that's worth.
Then you get someone like Michael who can take any kind of footage, even iPhone footage, and turn it into a music video.
Yeah.
Not that I was trying to pitch the services, but he's done some really phenomenal stuff with, you look at the video and go, there's nothing salvageable. And he's got some little tricks that he makes in a music video. So that's another option if someone said, hey, this is really great, but I want it to be even better.
So Deb, you know, without spoiling it, tell us a little bit about like next time.
Next time, I think that Madeline Sklar from GoGirlsMusic.com, and she also runs the really successful Twitter chat, GG Chat. I believe that she will be joining us next week. So she's going to share, and she's got some great ideas that, as far as music marketing, and they're effective. I've been on a couple podcasts with her, so I kind of have an idea. But she's going to talk about, well, I don't know for sure what she's going to talk about, but I was planning on asking her about social media marketing for musicians, because that's actually how we met. So that'll be really good.
Oh, that's cool.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Charles. This has been very delightful, as usual.
Oh, thank you.
All the great questions and all the, and if you want the really techie answers, then you got to talk to our producer because
that's right. Yeah. Well, we should bring Mike on.
I know. I was thinking about that. He's so shy, but I'll bring him on. You know what we'll do? We'll go live and we won't tell him. No,
just won't tell him, right? Yeah.
I don't really tell him. Excellent. Well, we'll see all of you same time, same place next week, and then watch the channel as we put out the post-production versions of Marketing Momentum with Charles and Deborah.
Okay. Bye-bye, Deborah. Bye-bye, everybody.